Okay, let's get into it. If you've turned on a TV or, just been on the internet at all in the last few years, chances are you definitely know this guy, Pedro Pascal. He seems to be everywhere, right? But his journey to becoming one of the most famous actors in the world was anything but a straight shot. I mean, today, he's a certified global superstar. Time magazine put him on their list of the 100 most influential people. He's won some of the biggest awards in acting. And yeah, thanks to a couple of iconic roles, he's basically become the internet's favorite dad. But here's the thing that's so wild. This didn't happen overnight. Not even close. It was a 20-year struggle that literally started with his family fleeing a dictatorship. At one point, he had less than $7 in his bank account. So the question is, how did he get from there to here? To really get who he is, you have to go way back. His story doesn't start in Hollywood. It starts in the middle of some serious political turmoil in 1970s Chile. So think about this for a second. Just 2 years before he was even born, a military coup led by General Pinochet violently took over the government. And by the time he was just 9 months old, his family had to flee the country as political refugees. They eventually made their way to the US, and he would later go on to study acting at NYU. So why did they have to run? Well, his parents were active supporters of the president who had been overthrown, Salvador Allende, and that put a massive target on their backs. The new regime literally listed them as enemies of the state, so they had to make an impossible choice: leave everything behind or risk their lives. And their journey to find safety, wow, it was not easy. For 6 whole months, the family had to hide out in the Venezuelan embassy in Santiago. From there, they were granted political asylum in Denmark before finally settling in the United States, first in Texas and then later in California. Okay, so that upbringing obviously shaped him. But even after graduating from a top acting school, success was nowhere in sight. I mean, this next chapter of his life can only be described as the 20-year struggle. And you can really feel the pressure he was under when you hear him talk about it himself. He had this deadline in his head, this idea that if he didn't make it by 29, it was over. He just had to keep pushing that deadline back year after year just to keep going. And when I say things got tough, I mean really tough. At his lowest point, this was his bank account balance: less than $7. He was right on the edge of quitting acting for good. And then, like something out of a movie, a small residual check showed up in the mail. It was for a tiny part he'd had on one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was just enough to keep the dream alive. For almost 2 decades, this was his reality. He'd get these small parts on shows like NYPD Blue or The Good Wife. He paid the bills by working as a waiter, and he even admits he was fired from those jobs maybe 10 times. It got so bad that his close friend, the actress Sarah Paulson, would sometimes give him her daily allowance from her own acting jobs just so he could afford to eat. Think about that. And then, after 20 years of grinding it out, everything changed. One single role finally gave him that huge break he had been fighting for all that time. The year was 2014. And he landed the part of Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, in the 4th season of Game of Thrones, which was, only the biggest show in the world at the time. He was already a massive fan, so you can imagine how he felt. He got to play this passionate, charismatic prince who audiences just fell in love with instantly. And the reaction? It was immediate and it was huge. Even though he was only in 1 season, places like Time and Esquire were calling his character one of the best in the entire show. The Los Angeles Times said this was the real tipping point for him. That 20-year struggle was finally, officially over. And he did not let that momentum go to waste. He jumped right from one massive hit into another one. He took on the lead role of DEA agent Javier Peña in the Netflix drama Narcos, which pretty much cemented his place as a major star. But see, that breakthrough was just the start. The next phase of his career was what launched him from being a recognizable actor to, well, a full-blown cultural phenomenon. And it's kind of wild how 2 completely different shows basically built the same public persona for him. In The Mandalorian, he's this lone warrior protecting the child, Grogu. And then, in The Last of Us, he's a tough-as-nailed survivor protecting a teenage girl, Ellie. These back-to-back roles as these reluctant but super protective father figures just became his thing. His performance as Joel in The Last of Us got him universal praise. I mean, people went nuts for it. Critics called it the best work of his entire career, and his chemistry with his co-star Bella Ramsey was just off the charts. For this role, he took home a Screen Actors Guild Award, which is a huge, huge deal. So all of this massive wave of popularity, especially from playing these protective characters, led to him getting this affectionate nickname online, the Internet's Daddy. It's this term that kind of captures his charismatic, comforting persona. And honestly, it's a title he seems to have a lot of fun with. And come on, you can't talk about his fame without talking about the memes. You've seen them, right? That incredible clip of him going from laughing to crying in a split second, or him just blissfully eating a sandwich? His face has become a key part of how the internet communicates. All right, so to wrap this up, let's look at the man himself. Because he's used this platform that he fought so hard for to become a pretty vocal advocate for causes that he really believes in, especially the ones that hit close to home. And for him, this advocacy is deeply personal. He is a fierce supporter of LGBTQ+ rights, and that's all tied to his relationship with his sister, Lux Pascal, who is a transgender woman. She has even said he was an important guide for her and one of the first people to help her shape her identity, which is just beautiful. And he doesn't just talk the talk. He consistently uses his platform for change. He's worn fashion to make a statement supporting trans women. He has spoken out against comments he felt were harmful to the trans community. And he's used his influence to organize events for humanitarian aid, like a benefit concert for relief in Palestine and Sudan. So when you look at the whole story, from political refugee to struggling actor with just a few bucks to his name, all the way to a global icon, it's just an incredible story of resilience. And now that he's finally reached the top, the only real question left is, what's he going to do next?